What's up guys, RBG here bringing you another video on Marvel's Avengers. I feel like I owe some of you guys an apology, and it's not because I'm taking a break from these videos, but I want to issue an apology to the ones who warned me of this game's inevitable downfall. If you've been following my coverage for Marvel's Avengers from the very beginning, then you know I was very optimistic about it. When it was first announced that Marvel and Square were collaborating to create a game featuring the Avengers, I thought it was a win-win situation. We saw how good Marvel games could be if they're given the same development as a AAA title, and even though they're two completely different games, we can't go without comparing it to Insomniac Spider-Man. Seeing how well Sony and Insomniac did with the first game, you would think that Square Enix would inject that same publishing and that same creativity into Marvel's Avengers, but what we got was a repetitive live service game that has continued to disappoint. And it's frustrating because I have to admit that I was completely wrong. As the months have rolled on, we've seen how incompetent the developers have been and how they continue to be. And we've yet to receive any new information on the future of Marvel's Avengers. Like, it's almost like we've gone back to those early days. Like, do you remember when we didn't even know if this game existed at all, and the only thing that was keeping it relevant was online influencers like myself? And I commend those who are still doing the damn thing, man. I honestly don't see how they've been able to do it for so long, considering the fact that there hasn't been much to talk about. And there's a lingering fog over the future of this game, but I take my hat off to them. I take it that they're still enjoying Marvel's Avengers and they're being patient that things pick up for it. But I don't have time to sit around and wait for the developers to get it together, man. I've been doing my part on marketing their game for them when they should have been doing it for themselves. You know, it's funny because I remember back when I was reporting all the info and leaks, and I had some of you guys saying that I should get some kind of shout out or compensation from Crystal Dynamics, because if it was for YouTubers like me, they would have forgot about the game a long time ago. And this isn't me trying to be one of those pick me ass dudes out there who like to grovel at their feet on Twitter, because I don't really have time for that, guys. Crystal Dynamics, if they want to acknowledge the things that I've done for them, that's on them. If they don't, they don't. If they do, they do. I'm not looking for any kind of approbation from them. But it just pains me because the only thing that's keeping Marvel's Avengers relevant nowadays is how badly it's been performing, which seemed impossible since we had a development team who has a solid pedigree with producing top-of-the-line titles. They've delivered so many classes from the Soul Reaper games to their more mainstream games like the Tomb Raider series. Like, there was no reason for this game to fail, but I kept forgetting that Crystal Dynamics doesn't necessarily have a lot of power when it comes to the direction they want to go in with any of their projects nowadays, because at the end of the day, they have to answer to Square Enix. This is a publishing company that's put out bangers like your Final Fantasies and your Dragon Quest. They're the king of the OG role-playing genre, in my opinion. Some of you might beg to differ, but I think Square Enix has pretty much owned that title. But with that said, they've gotten really greedy and tone deaf when it comes to delivering things we want. Like, they already had a bad reputation for announcing games only to release them almost a decade later. And once we get that game, it doesn't always live up to the expectations we have for it. Just look at Final Fantasy 15, which was originally called Final Fantasy Versus 13. That was announced back in 2006, but it took Square 10 years to deliver that game. We heard rumors about how they didn't really know what direction to take the game in and the hell they put the devs through. Hajime Tabata, who was essentially the director and savior of that project, has since cut his ties with Square, leading to the rest of the DLCs they had planned for FF15 being axed. And I don't blame them because, as I said, this is one of the most tone-deaf companies in the gaming history. And when they're not delivering their games on the date they originally promised, they're doing slimy business practices to make more money. When they released Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which they botched by outsourcing Crystal Dynamics to work on Avengers and assigned idols to work on it, the game understandably got a lukewarm reception compared to the previous games in the Tomb Raider franchise. Unlike the Rise of the Tomb Raider, which was one of the top selling games of 2015, Shadow of the Tomb Raider got off to an extremely slow start. And because of that, Square Enix out of nowhere decided to discount the game to $40 on Steam. 1 month after it was originally released, and people already spent $60 on it. To make matters even worse, they cut the Croft Edition DLC bundle, which was originally $110, down to $58, which is roughly around the same price of the game alone when it was first released. So people basically spent their hard-earned money in advance through pre-orders and season passes just for this greedy-ass company to turn around and hit them with a surprise announcement. Just because their game wasn't receiving the generated sales they wanted it to. And rightfully so, fans were upset because they didn't know Square Enix was going to drop the game by 50% 5 weeks after it was released. And I feel bad for hyping you guys up to pre-order this game after knowing Square's shady past. I know that they very seldom do these shady business practices, especially if they're putting out a title that has a dedicated fan base, but they had everything they needed to deliver a solid game. Not only is the studio full of talented developers, some of which were brought on board to help out with things like the combat mechanics, they're working with a brand that's more popular than it's ever been before and has so much material to work with. There's plenty of storylines to pull from, and there's an unlimited roster of heroes and villains to introduce. Like, even though they announced that this is going to be a games as a service, I still had faith. And even though I'd already forked over $60, I didn't mind spending additional money if the devs deserved it. There was so many things I had in mind on what they could have done with this game to keep it engaging. While we were waiting on the upcoming DLC heroes, they could have given us costumes for the default heroes, which in my honest opinion should have been an easy thing to do, right? Unless you're trying to make those skins have a certain function, you don't necessarily have to program them to do anything other than look aesthetically pleasing. One of the biggest things Marvel's Avengers had going against it was the fact that they don't look anything like their movie components. Although I personally didn't really have an issue with the original designs, I can understand why some people weren't really fans of it. And I didn't really agree that the game was automatically deemed a failure because of how the characters looked. But I agreed that they could have been better, you know? Just look at Marvel Spider-Man. Insomniac collaborated with some of the best artists to ensure that this character looked cool in this game. Even though the game had a plethora of amazing looking costumes, some of which were classics that were reimagined for the modern world, I found myself showing more favoritism towards the new advanced suit because that's the best looking costume in my honest opinion. Not just the best costume in the game, but the best costume in all Spider-Man history. And Square Enix even said that they were trying to produce a Marvel game that would be better than Marvel Spider-Man. But there hasn't been one design in Marvel's Avengers that holds a candle to Spider-Man. The only thing we've gotten are decent to downright terrible costumes, some of which they have the nerve to charge actual money for. And yeah, I know some of you are going to argue that you have the option to unlock those costumes, but they can only be unlocked through challenge cards. And depending on your patience level, you're going to have to do these repetitive missions in order to complete those cards. For some reason, the devs have gotten it in their mind that we want recolors of the same costumes we already hate. So instead of releasing the MCU costumes we've asked for since the game's inception, they give us those ugly recolors with a few little accessories added on to make them look new. And they know people don't have 1,400 credits to spend on some of the better looking costumes like Kate Bishop's signature outfit, which should have been free. So they tempted players to spend actual money to purchase those credits. And for the longest time, people have said that Square Enix and Crystal have been doing this deliberately, releasing these ugly costumes to get people to spend money because the studio has to make back what they put into the project. I didn't believe that story at first, but now I'm really starting to think the studio is doing this on purpose. They won't say why they haven't added any of the MCU costumes in the game, but some fans have argued that, oh, they can't do that because those suits are exclusive to the movies. And if that's the case, then why do we see other studios using them in all these mobile games? Marvel Contest of Champion can't go without using them in some form or another, so there's no wonder that fans say that this game looks more like a mobile game or mobile games look better than this game. And it's because of things like this. Before Marvel Spider-Man was even released, Insomniac and Sony were already rolling out MCU skins like the Iron Spider and Stark suit. They gave us the homemade suit, and after a year of the game being out, we got another suit in the form of Spider-Man Far From Home. So I don't think it would have been that hard for Square Enix to ask Disney if they could use some of those MCU assets. People would have gladly forked over their money to see those costumes in action. If you ask me, they would have made the game feel complete because it already has a lot of MCU influences in it with how the characters function and move. The characters move just like their movie counterparts, so having them done those costumes would have been the icing on the cake. And the graphics would have only added to that. Like, say what you will about the game's presentation, but you can't deny that the visuals are impressive. The fans have taken multiple screenshots to showcase the graphical fidelity and overall detail in this game, which says a lot because once again, it's the fans that are doing Crystal Dynamics' job for them. And I'm trying not to knock CD because they're doing what they can, but it's not enough. Where's the new game plus for the campaign mode that's arguably the highlight of your game? In my honest opinion, the story and cutscenes, that's the thing that keeps this game interesting. When those early playthroughs went up before the game was released, people were commenting how the campaign was surprisingly enjoyable. Like, no lie, I liked the campaign so much that I played it twice. But I had to do that on 2 separate PSN accounts in order to do it. I couldn't replay the missions over with the costumes I unlocked through my challenge cards, which sucks. And there's no reason it's taking this long for the devs to give us this new game plus that we've been asking for. We should have automatically had that available for all the additional characters such as Kate Bishop, who has her own story mode feature. Like, these shouldn't be one and done things, man. Speaking of Kate Bishop, aka Hawkeye, I gotta point out something. Even though Crystal has announced that this Hawkeye DLC is coming out and how they're gonna be going into details in the War Table stream, keep Keep in mind that this War Table stream is going to be at the very end of the month, and while it's been announced that Maestro Hulk will be the main antagonist of their release, it still doesn't change the fact that the villains variety has been lacking. So far, we've only had characters like the Taskmaster and Abomination, and I'm not including Mojo because he's exclusive to the campaign. We just got the Super Adaptoid for Kate Bishop's DLC, but he's basically just a Taskmaster with a few additional Avengers capabilities. And I have a nagging suspicion that Maestro Hulk is going to be nothing more than an Abomination clone with a few new moves to set him apart. So other than the story aspect, which I think will be interesting, everything else doesn't really excite me. When you look at the promotional art for the upcoming DLC, you instantly see the main thing that's been plaguing this game from the very beginning. And that's the repetitive enemy types. You see the typical AIM robots and mechs that have been used to death. Like, I know the Maestro has ties to AIM in the comics, but I don't remember him using them as lackeys like it seems like he's going to be doing in this game. If they don't bring us anything new outside of the Maestro, then I'm going to be sorely disappointed, because all Kate Bishop had was these same enemy types. They even tried to throw in the giant spider mech from the To Tame a Titan mission and act like it was something new. So seeing this reoccurring pattern doesn't necessarily have me excited for the later DLC characters that are coming down the pipeline. We still haven't gotten the Spider-Man mission, which is supposed to be an exclusive to the PS4 and PS5 users. I'm not even sure if that's even on the table anymore, considering how poor the game's been received. But that's besides the point. I just want to apologize to all the people, whether you came at me aggressively or you brought up valid points as to why I shouldn't be hyping this game up. Although I had every reason to believe that Crystal couldn't fail, I had to look at the ones who were calling the show, which is Square Enix. Do I believe they can bounce back? Yeah, we've seen some comeback stories in the gaming industry, but I don't see Avengers coming back to prominence anytime soon. But I could be wrong. Like, CD will probably reveal something in this upcoming War Table stream that'll include things like new villains, some surprise characters, or a possible roadmap. Until then, I'm done, man. Like, this isn't a goodbye, this is just I'll see you later. But what do you guys think of this? Do you think I'm being too harsh on the game, or do you think I have every right to be frustrated? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, I ask you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback and will only help me improve on future videos. But if you really enjoyed the video, it would help me out tremendously if you share it with all your friends and followers on social media. Sharing really makes a difference. But once again, this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.